planet, and surely for our astronauts on long-duration space flights. 1 to 2 Americans out of 5 report isolation so severe that it impacts their lives. The space station. It provides an opportunity for our next generation of space researchers. But how do we engage them? How do we energize them? And with what? In another role, 2 years ago, I went to a space conference. And I knew this particular fact as I went. By the year 2022, according to the Council on, President's Council on Science and Technology, we will be short 1 million STEM graduates to fill our jobs. In the marketplace gathering where new inventions were being displayed, I could hardly see the name of the company where all the people had surrounded their new invention. Looking much like a microwave oven, this company was made in space. And as I stepped up, there was a sign there that said, "What would you make if you made the first thing in space?" And I thought about it, and then another guy walked up to me and he goes, "I'm picking up an application and I know what mine's going to be." And I thought, well, what do you got? He said, "I'm going to ask my girlfriend to marry me, and her engagement ring is going to be made in space." And I'm all for marriage. And I said, "Yeah, sure. It's okay with her that it's plastic and everything." Yes, he says it's made in space. So I continue to think about this because, after all, it was zero gravity, and there's this STEM student thing. But what? Space Games was a culminating idea. It tied so many things together, and it tied cool things together. Zero gravity, astronauts, the space station, the issue of long-duration space flight, and on top of that, a cutting-edge technology like no other yet. It was that idea that I sent to Made in Space. And after what I've heard were dozens of ideas, and I sadly bumped the proposal ring, they adopted mine, and a new STEM innovation was born. It was for me to develop a lot more around it, like what would the goals be for this kind of project? What would the measures be? All good projects have both of those. And in addition, I had to learn something about good game making. There's a whole game theory area, and good games are good for a reason. For example, if you have a high-achieving group, they like to be awarded points. And if they don't do well, you take those points away. Well, astronauts are a high-achieving group, so the gamification of the space game had to do that. So I needed to pitch this idea. And the idea was, how could STEM students innovate a game that would be made in space, designed for space, on the zero-gravity 3D printer on the space station, and played by the astronauts? I found a group of students, pardon me, a group of robotics students combined with Makers Club. There were some entrepreneurs, there were some students in astronomy clubs, and I had almost 40 students at my first meeting. I talked about the space games idea, and they said that they were game for it. Next, I'd like to introduce to you, and it is with great pride, that I have brought 2 students from that original Space Games group, our pilot group, and 2 very important leaders in that design, Colin Parsons and Oliver Foster.
lessons. So eventually we had to come up with this game after a long, arduous design process. So what was the game that we decided on? It's called Star Catcher. So it's a combination of, you know that game Perplexus, where you have this plastic sphere and you try to move the ball along the track inside. It's really difficult to do, but really fun. And Hot Potato, where you try to toss a ball or a potato between people. So we thought we could combine those in a cool way in space with this design. So the way it works is you take this ball, the star, the marble, and you try to get it into this inner chamber, the catcher, which is the pyramid shape, to gain points. And you don't want to be the person holding it at the end of 2 minutes. So the way you do it is you have to get it in, which is difficult enough in gravity, and then you pass it along, just like Hot Potato. And at the end, whoever's holding it loses. So the challenge in this is not just that it's difficult to play in Earth gravity, but astronauts have to master playing it in zero gravity, which is an extremely challenging environment. We have to test it in a pool just to see what it's like in zero gravity. And it's the first game uniquely designed for space play for astronauts to do in their free time, which is why we cut the time down to 2 minutes. And for us, this game was really a great challenge because it enabled us to use our science skills, our math skills, technology, engineering, our computer animation and design skills. We did some mathematical modeling and simulations, which we thought was really fun. And we had a ton of ideas. It was really difficult to narrow it down, to combine them all, and eventually come up with a product that we thought the astronauts would want to play. The whole goal of this is to give them something that they'd enjoy playing, that they'd say, oh, that's fun, and it would increase their productivity and make them feel good about being up there. So eventually, when we finally got to that design, our game launched on March 22nd, 2016. That's Pacific time. It launched on the 23rd from Cape Canaveral. But for us, it was Pacific time on orbital ATK. And just as was mentioned earlier, the most fun part of working with space is getting to see it launched up. So remember, me and Ollie, we were coming back from a volleyball tournament in Las Vegas, just trying to get the live stream while we were in the airport of the rocket going up, counting down, watching, making sure, hoping that it would make it. And it actually did make it up, and they're going to print it in late August or early September 2016, which we're really excited to do. But I remember watching as it went up and thinking, what if every STEM student had this opportunity? What if every person who's interested in science, math, technology, engineering could see this and see their own invention and see its impact in space? And I thought, wow, what a great chance this is. Let's try to extend it. And so that's the whole goal of this program, to try to extend it to 7+ million STEM students across the country that could benefit from something like this. So how did we ultimately do that? To answer that question, I'd like to bring up Oliver Osterman.
So a big part of the process was trying to get as many people as we could so that we could have a good idea. And part of that was when MJ originally came to us, the teacher that she reached out to went to the robotics team, because why not? The robotics, they do engineering. And so then from there, we branched out and we went to the Maker Club, and as well as some of our earlier prototypes, while we had been brainstorming and coming up with ideas and CADing them and then 3D printing them at our school's 3D printer, we would carry them around school and try and get people interested. And through that, we also got some more people in. So by the second or third iteration of our things, from some of them being shut down because there were too many parts, it was too big, or it had already been done, we finally got to this one. And through that, the process coming up with them was very interesting and very collaborative between everyone, of groups of somewhere between 40 to smaller groups of 5, depending on the day. And it really allowed us to kind of come together, and if one person came with the original idea, it started bursts of ideas in other people, and from there we just kind of branched out. And it was wonderful to see people going out and out of their way to research different things in space and different concepts which you wouldn't really think about here, because we're also confined to 1G. That for us, one of the biggest struggles was kind of wrapping our brains around 0G and how everything floats and there's not this big overwhelming force taking things down. So that was kind of a big part of it, was just kind of having to go through the process several times, each time remembering, oh, we're in space again, oh, we're in space, oh, we're in space, and kind of getting over that, as well as trying to keep the astronauts' time as far down as possible. So overall, it was a brilliant experience, and every time you started, you'd have to keep on pinching yourself to say, like, wow, this is going to go in space. And I think it's just such a wonderful experience that the possibility for other people to do it would just be so good, because it really is making me think much more about doing something involving space instead of something down here on the low life Earth.
Okay, very good, thanks. Space Games is so far a success. As you know, that we're still expecting the print to happen in the late summer, early fall. Our Space Games group worked collaboratively. Our Space Games group also was cracking a very difficult challenge in a lot of ways, and at the same time, once they got going, more and more ideas came up. Besides that, I want to point out something that I don't think I've shared yet with any of the Space Games team, this original team. This is a testing ground. We wanted to be sure that Space Games would work, and if it did work, we can't wait to share it with others and tell them our best practices. And I want to explain something that I saw as the leader, as the creator of Space Games. Created the idea. These guys actually invented it. There was a level of compassion that I saw from these team members. This wasn't just about a game, but if you listened carefully to the conversations that went in on making the game, they were talking about the life of the astronaut. How would he or she do with this? Would they really like it? Would they laugh about it? How would they interact with it? And that was something that actually was quite unique. And my thinking is this: if we're combining both the scientists and that compassionate inventor together, I think our futures look pretty good. And so the call to action today is, like Oliver said, we have millions of students standing by, just in the U.S. alone. We have an opportunity for them, and we certainly know that we need them. What I'd like to do is also read a quote from one of the Space Games team members when I asked the question, how would you evaluate this experience? This member's response is, our involvement in Space Games was incredible. It hasn't been just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but more like a one-in-a-million lifetimes chance. The idea that our designs can be 3D printed in space and enjoyed by astronauts is mind-blowing. And the hard work, thought, and perseverance we put into our designs have been rewards in and of themselves. For us, Space Games has broken the intangibility of space and made us feel that we are really achieving something out of this world. And what I could say to cosmonaut Lyman is, next time you go up, we're going to give you a space game. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to be in touch with me. I know I've been in touch with a number of you out in the audience and still others. Very excited to have joined you this conference. Any questions?
Thank
you. Printed, and what we'd like to do is pass it around after all of the rest of the presentations are done. Dan?
Yeah, MJ, thank you so much, and thank you for your students presenting this. I'm thinking about the nature of a competition. This is a topic that's come up several times throughout this conference. It's great to have a winner, but if you say reaching 7 million, you want to reach those 7 million and not have 7 million minus 1 be rejections. So how can you structure this experience so that it's a success for everyone involved and not just a narrowing down competition to the one that gets printed?
Somebody would, any suggestions?
Yeah, well, that's obviously really tricky to do. I mean, as with any competition like Genes in Space, for example, you have to have some people that are going to be able to do it, and not everyone can. But I think the way that you make it rewarding for everyone is that they see that their designs can work. If their designs are vetted through and they're successful, and they get that experience of not only just getting to come up with an idea for a game, but using CAD software, playing it out mathematically, looking at the science of zero gravity, I think that provides them with not just the sense of having made something, the sense of having gained real skills that they can use in the workplace, maybe for NASA or cases, with helping advance the future of humankind in space flight and computing. I know us especially, we really enjoyed coming up with the different CAD designs. I did some mathematical modeling and coded some simulations, which was really fun to do. And even if it hadn't worked out, I think that was a really useful experience that was rewarding in and of itself.
And I'd also like to put some extra designs in a possible library too. So maybe there are some excellent space games, but I think that just like anything else, even in play.
And out of the box idea, the other day we had a presentation by Magnopus on the virtual reality system that will have tactile systems. So you could even have all of the games be playable in a virtual reality simulated environment where it's behaving as it would, but in a virtual reality environment.
Yeah, that's right. All the possibilities exist.
I also suggest, and this comes to mind because NASA does this, every year they put out a book called Spin-Offs. And it's a collection of the research that NASA puts out or has done every year associated with the ISS. And if you run a yearly competition or whatever, it would be really cool to put out a booklet or a handbook every year of what those designs that had been done and submitted were. And so every year you just put out, you add to your library, but you put out a spin-offs, of space game spin-offs every year
I'll like that
of
down.
those designs.
That's an interesting question.
And that would be like really, really cool. And it would just give more samples or examples
Right.
that would help to motivate and stimulate the mind, for future design.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the way that this is designed, that's really ideal for this sort of thing doing CAD because not only does it have to be like a book form, but since they're CADs, literally anyone can print them. So these students can print them on their own and test them out in a pool if they can find a way to make it, to weigh it down to make it what they want. So it doesn't just have to be something they look at, it can be something they actually do on their own. It's not a space station, it's still put on.
Yes.
First presentation I see go from murder to compassion. But,
Well, we care.
yeah. I think my reaction is the people who are on Earth that live in isolation the most are in prison. African Americans are disproportionately represented in prisons, and they're disproportionately underrepresented at this conference. I would think that they would know best about what it's like to create a game because they're in prison. And if your results are to get compassion, it might really elevate the entire, maybe even the prison population to be more dedicated to something that's certainly out of their reach. And there are rewards for doing good things in prison, like getting time off for good behavior. So possibly participating in a space games would help them move on and go out into the world.
Fascinating idea.
So for the students, what did you learn in the process that you kind of take forward? What did you take out of it?
Well, in a practical sense, I learned more about how to CAD because I was already kind of doing it for robotics, but I learned more kind of how to do animation so that we could really visualize it. Also more how 3D printers actually work because we had to debug the one in our school that no one really used and it's kind of messy all the time. On another sense, it was kind of good to do a collaborative process where there wasn't really a right answer, unlike in school where there's usually a right answer, and so sometimes like, okay, just listen to the smart kid, he knows it all. It was kind of nice to be able to where there is no right answer, so everyone is right in a sense, and so I don't know. It was nice to be able to have a different way to learn with everyone, and kind of how that interaction works, and trying to find the best solution. As well as learning just other things, and I found out more about other people around me that I didn't know. Part of it was I didn't know that he was crazy at some math stuff that watching him do. I was like, what are you doing? But okay, and it was really cool to kind of work it into what I was doing with CADing and stuff like that. It was just overall it was a good experience.
Yes.
Just a question. Have you guys seen Ender's Game, the movie?
Yes.
Oh man, this is just so crazy. It's all coming together.
Well, I read a lot of science fiction
Yeah.
as a way to really de-stress, and it winds up, I think, giving a lot of ideas. Space Games was almost a middle of the night idea. It was almost a sit up and then go, I know what I'll write up. And as I wrote it up to send to Make the Space to be one of those, well, I have the winning idea, it really went up several levels. And I wrote it up, and then there's the send factor. You ever had, and it's like, I can't send it yet. And I read it through, is this really a good idea? What about the guy in the ring? Yeah. Send it. Okay, it's done. So I encourage you all to read science fiction.
Thank you guys. You guys are awesome.
We got time for one more.
Yeah, I was just curious about the makeup of your team, both gender-wise and ethnicity-wise. And I heard what she said, but there are also a ton of minorities who are not in prison, who are in school, and who are doing good work, and who are very interested in STEM, and who have the idea, but ecologically, using Uri Bronfenbrenner's theory of ecology, do not have people who have access in their inner circles. So what is the extent to which those who have the access and the privilege are then able to reach back? So what is the makeup of your team, and then what are next steps in terms of bringing others?
Well, I'd like to answer that, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was always a concern of mine. We had, within about the original group of 40, about a dozen girls. And the thing about Space Games is it is all about the imagination. It is made in space to be played in space. There are some goals, there's some measures. Students can follow these, and very doable. It just requires everybody thinking out of the box. And so I hope that Space Games can wind up into the hands of a lot of students and then be put on the station to be printed. It's an interesting thing, this is, because it goes on a mission, but it will be sent up as a print. Weighs nothing at all.
So what happened to the 12 girls?
They came and went, and like the rest of the group, there were always just a couple that wind up hanging on. But I encourage them because I'm very conscientious about making sure the girls stayed on.
So, I'm sorry, just what was the makeup of the final group? Ethnically and
The
gender-wise?
final group is,
It was kind of varied.
it's kind
varied
of hard to
every
say what the
meeting.
final group was, but I could tell you off, maybe afterward, because I know we're winding up, and then we can talk about that. This is where
Thank you.
you're interested in your school, your organization, cases, etc. I think the alignment is pretty good, and I'm very excited about talking to you about it. Okay, thank you so much.
Great job, guys.